Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Bahubali 2, the conclusion, is the second and final part in what was an epic viewing experience. This movie I related to compared to The Lion King. I would say that this movie is so many things all wrapped into one. You got The Lion King, you got aspects of like Superman, you got aspects of like Game of Thrones, you have aspects of like Robin Hood. Like, it is so many different types of stories all blended in this epic tale, which I mentioned in my review of the first Bahubali film, that it was the second half, or the second last third of that movie was kind of a prequel to kind of show the audience the importance of this person, Bahubali, and why it's so important that this guy is the kind of the second coming of him. But I mentioned that it didn't really, despite it being a prequel, it didn't connect all the way to the modern, the more current point in the story. This movie is that chunk. This movie is that story that happened between after the events of that giant battle where the queen says that Bahubali will become the new king. This, which is, overlooks her son, they are cousins of each other, and Bahubali is the son of the younger sibling of the two uncles. The older of the sibling is the uncle with the disabled arm, and his son was looked past to be king. And this shows the events that led to Bahubali as a child being taken to that other place on the bottom of that waterfall that we saw at the beginning of Bahubali, the very first film. This movie was amazing. I would say 100% the CG in this film was a huge step up. There was a couple instances towards the end the end CG was kind of a little sad, but the movie itself was epic. The story of him going, like, after being named, he's going to be king. Like, the ceremony hasn't happened yet. This starts off actually with a ceremony of sorts where the queen has a bowl of hot flaming coals on her head, and she has to walk to a place in order for these coals to light this statue on fire or whatever. It's like this, clearly a ceremony. I have no idea what the meaning is behind the ceremony, but it's something that comes up later on in this movie as well. But the set piece that this movie starts on, of her having to walk and not break stride, and there's an elephant that's charging at her, and the giant Bahubali pulls this giant statue that rams into the elephant to knock it out of its way so she can not break her stride in order to light this fire. Amazing action set piece. The giant, like, statue that's on wheels that Bahubali uses to ram this elephant out of the way, like, so intricately designed. Like, so much of the artistry in these movies is the farthest away you can get from minimalism. Like, the term you could never use in these movies to describe anything is minimal. It is maximal to everything. The intricacies of design in everything is so intricate, so complex, so beautiful. But yeah, kind of a crazy set piece. He, like, lights this arrow on fire, this gigantic bow and arrow that the elephant is holding the bow, and he draws back the arrow to light this like giant statue that's made of hay on fire. Amazing set piece. I had no idea what was going on, but it was a beautiful way to start this movie. Also, I noticed that in the CG moments, it does not label the moments where animals are being abused as CG. I mean, at the beginning of the movie, it's stated that all the animals in this movie are CG animals. No animals were actually hurt, which I've heard people commenting on my previous movie review, saying that the reason they do that is because culturally in India, they have a lot of love for animals and protect animals. A lot of people are vegetarian for those same reasons. And because of that, they make sure never to use or harm animals and to label those things. Because in the previous movie, anytime an animal was being fought or like kind of in danger or whatever, the CG animal, there'd be like a little watermark on the screen stating that it was CGI. So interesting. So it doesn't have that watermark in this movie, but still CG animals and still great CG for like 95% of this movie has amazing CG. And there's a few things, mostly at the very end, that don't look that great. But considering how epic of scale this movie is, I love it. I also read somebody commented that the director likes to use a lot of practical effects, which I appreciate that. Obviously, a lot of the CG effects, the reasons why they aren't so good in this movie, I'm sure, as in the previous movie, is budgets aren't as big in India as they are in the U.S. But I think I love practical effects. I'm able to overlook bad CG as long as the story's good. And I think that the improvements in CG from the last film to this one are noticeable, and I appreciated them, and I enjoyed them. I thought this was an insane movie. I mean, just as insane as the last one. It's mostly is that prequel, is that story of how Bãhubali, what happened to him, why was he killed by this guy who seemingly loves him, where did that child come from? And you find out that like before he is like the ceremony to crown him king, he goes on a tour. Like the queen is trying to find a wife for him, and he's not really stoked on any of them she's not stoked on any of them. She wants to find the perfect woman, and he goes out on a tour with the Katapa, their kind of slave that's a guard kind of guy. He calls him his uncle. He goes on a tour. Bãhubali goes on a tour with this guy. And while on tour, just to go to the different kingdoms around the area, there's an attack that happens, and he sees this woman who's this badass warrior, and he falls in love with her. And for some reason, he decides to pretend like he has zero skills, even though he is like effortlessly amazing at fighting and in combat in every way. But he's putting on this ruse, which is hilarious that he's doing that, but also that Katapa is the best wingman ever. Like, he goes along with it instantaneously, which is amazing. It is, because he's like, in so many ways, like it's almost like Superman pretending to be Clark Kent, right? Like that's the part of this movie that made me feel, because he has like super human abilities. Like he can't fly necessarily, but he is like, his strength is out of this world, unnaturally strong. His abilities are so good that he can, while making himself look bad at things like shooting bow and arrow, he can manipulate other people in order to make them look better. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Now you can wear The Many Faces, original art by Ray Taylor. Select pieces from the ongoing series of abstract ink paintings. All products made with high-quality materials, made right here in the USA. Go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch to browse the entire collection and save yourself an extra 10% when you check out by using coupon code RTSTMF. So once again, go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch and save 10% when you use coupon code RTSTMF. And now, back to our show. Just this great scene of like, there's this guard that's trying to show Bãhubali, like he's he's tasked with teaching him how to be a good warrior. But meanwhile, of course, Bahubali is like the ultimate warrior already. Hilarious. Falls in love. There's like a lot of miscommunication in this movie. A lot of like manipulation in which like there's setups to manipulation are amazing throughout this entire movie. Of, you know, you have this other part of the family. You have the uncle who has the disabled arm, and the son who is looked past to become king, who wants to become king. They're both trying to manipulate situations in order to get Bahubali out of there. They want to manipulate situations in order the queen will sign off on getting rid of Bahubali and crowning him instead, which his name is Balala Diva. I'm never going to try that name again. But yeah, I loved the writing of this movie. So well done. Like, you want to talk about a chess game, right? Like Game of Thrones level, like kingdom, family, manipulation, working behind the scenes, trying to set things up. Masterful. The writing of this movie is masterful. And you still get like the love story. He falls in love with this woman who's a badass, and he wants her to fall in love with him without her knowing that he is this amazing dude, that he has all of these skills. Like, he wants her to fall in love with him just for being him, not for being the king. It's almost like the inverse of Aladdin in a lot of ways. Where like in Aladdin, he's pretending to be this rich and powerful person. But in this one, he's like it in a lot of ways. It's like Superman. He's like he wants her to fall in love with Clark Kent, not Superman, which is beautiful. And then when it comes out that they find out who he is, because there's like this big battle. Like, his kingdom is not she like the queen wants her to marry the son. There's a miscommunication on which son. She's like, nah, that's not going to work. I don't roll that way. So the queen's like, okay, we're going to go invade this kingdom, and we're going to make her, we're going to imprison her. And when they're being attacked, that's when Bahubali kind of shows his true colors. He shows his ability to do so many things. Like just there's this, like, I think the first moment where he kind of shows who he really is when there's this bow and arrow thing. Like, they're being invaded, and she's shooting at them with bow and arrows, and he comes out and he's shooting he's like shooting multiple arrows at a time, and he shows her how to do it, and it's like this tag team of bow and arrow, like, archery fight, which is amazing, right? All the action set pieces in this movie are amazing. And that's when he first shows his hand. And there's this big thing where they're being invaded, and he uses the antlers on these cows. He sets them on fire and causes them to stampede. And then he, like, breaks a dam to cause this massive flooding to get rid of them. Like, he does these epic things in order to protect this kingdom. They find out who he is, and they're like, oh, he gets a message to be like, okay, you need to bring her back as a prisoner. And of course she doesn't want to do that, so they, kind of make plans like, okay, you'll come back with me as a partner. I love you, you love me. We're gonna smooth this thing out, right? She doesn't know what she's talking about. We're gonna go back. We're gonna talk to my mom. We're gonna smooth it over. You're gonna marry me. I've been looking for a wife. You're epic. You're an epic fighter lady. I'm an epic fighter dude, right? We're going to make this thing work. Okay, I've got the biggest kingdom. This is amazing. Like, it's all going to work out. And then they get on this boat. Like, there's a scene where she's walking onto this boat, right? They're going to go back to his kingdom. And the boat, like, drifts away from the dock. And he jumps in the water and, like, has his arms stretched out. And he has her walk across his arms like a bridge. Like, just kind of, just these little things where it's like chivalry, like putting a coat over a pond, but it's him doing this arm bridge thing. Then there's the fun musical moment when they're on the boat. Another song about their love and all this stuff. And there's this crazy moment where really this movie lets you know that we're in fantasy land. I mean, aside from Bahubali's like epic strength and his abilities to fight, kind of like superhuman abilities, this boat, like he spins the wheel and this boat just takes off in the air and they go flying through the clouds. And it's like, it is a one sense, it's beautiful. It is gorgeous. Like so many scenes in this movie, in both of these films, are just you're visually stunning what you're looking at. But then also clearly like lets you know that we are in a fantasy world. Despite it feeling grounded in a lot of ways with like these kingdoms and fighting over power, all that stuff, we are still in like a fantasy world. And there's these great moments also where, you know, the guy who's disabled, he feels like he was looked over because of his disability. And it's pointed out specifically that it's not because of his disability. It is because of his poor decision making. And that there are examples of his poor decision making within the stories of these movies. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful that they make a point to not let that assumption go unchallenged. You know, that, you know, this is why. This is really why. Okay? You want to make excuses because you got your arm's not working. You don't have a good arm. You only got one good arm. That's not it. It's because you make bad decisions. Clearly, as he is trying to kind of manipulate the situation to get his son to become king instead of Bahubali. And then when they get back, there's like it's just so amazing how their manipulations turn into the situations where Bahubali is like shunned from the kingdom and forced to live amongst the people who love him, right? Like the queen made the right decision saying that Bahubali was going to be the king of the next king to rule the kingdom. And because of her being manipulated and this other guy, his cousin, getting the throne, and Bahubali being demoted to because Bahubali wants to marry this other woman, and it goes against the queen's word, and because of that, she ends up making the other guy king, and he just becomes like the head of the military or whatever. And then something else happens. And he's then he's shunned, both of them forced to leave the kingdom altogether and be part of the people. And that's where you see like how much the people love, but like he is the man of the people. They absolutely love him. To where when he goes out to be amongst the people, they all love him. He like becomes a teacher. He invents all of these things to make their work even easier to do. Like he is so much a man of the people. So much so when the moment of the other guy becoming king, the ceremony of this other guy becoming king, like the ground literally shakes with the people that support and love Bahubali. It's like this story is so good. Like in so many ways, it took what the first movie was doing, setting up this character, showing the early stages of the original Bahubali, and then showing what happened to the kid later on to be the person to come back. And then this movie is just, it's almost 3 hours long, and 3/4 of it are that prequel story of all of the things that happened to make the queen save this child. It's amazing. And to see the origin story of this badass woman that Bahubali fell in love with, that he pretended to be unskilled, and you see how she ended up in chains, and you see why the other king is so like they are the only two people that believe that he will come back because he wants to seek revenge, but she thinks he's gonna free her. Like, it provides so much more context to the story through this movie. Absolutely amazing. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. And of course, it also shows how Katapa betrayed him, how he was used, how he was set up. It's just so beautiful how all these setups, man. How he thinks he's doing this one thing. Like there's a scene where the other queen's guard is convinced by the uncle to go in and kill the king, to kill this other guy. And then when he gets in there, it's all a setup. And it's just so beautifully, like, everything, the manipulations, the setup, and then the execution is so beautiful. Because it's like, oh, he's going to go do this thing. And then you find out that it's just, oh, it's all been a setup. It has all been for them to get exactly what they want. To get the queen to sign off on killing Bãhubali. And it's like, and even like sending Katapa to go do it, knowing that he's like their quote unquote dog, right? He's the slave that they use that's been honored them, and they do it because they don't want the blood to be on the hands of the queen, right? Have him go do it because the people love Bãhubali. And if the people find out that the queen had him killed, then it just, the kingdom would just explode. And even when he comes back after doing the deed and getting compassion from Bãhubali after he did this, and like, despite the fact that he was the one that he wanted him to bless his son when he gets born. Like, it is like the layers of betrayal and manipulation in this movie are at a level that you just don't see in movies. Not to mention the epic action, the beautiful sets, the just the epic scale of everything. Like, these movies need to be watched in a movie theater. They're just amazing. And just the writing, just on all levels, so good. So good. The love stories, the family drama, the backstabbing, literal backstabbing, just seeing how selfless Bãhubali was, constantly forgiving people for doing the things that end his life, you know? It's just, it's amazing. It's like watching this movie, I just couldn't, despite the runtimes of these movies, it just can't, you get so sucked into the story that it's just constant. You're on this ride and you can't wait to see how it happens. And even towards the end, like, I'm like watching this, checking the runtime, like, are they going to get to the present time? Like, are we going to see the actual Bãhubali go and reclaim the kingdom? And of course we do. It's and that's so great. That's kind of where, like, there's scenes where they use the palm trees to like launch them to catapult these groups of guys with shields, like these balls of shield guys. The CG gets a little questionable towards the end. in that final, despite how epic that final battle scene is, with everything that's going on, it's like so amazing, so epic. CG is a little bit worse in comparison to the rest of the movie. And there's a scene where this giant golden statue loses its head, right? And the end of this movie is like this head of this golden statue getting into the river and then being washed down the waterfall, this epic waterfall that Baahubali initially climbed at the beginning of the first movie, right? Looks so fake. Looks so bad. It is. It's sad. It's like one of the few times I've ever watched a movie where I wish the director at some point, could still happen, I'd love for the director at some point to go back and clean up the CG, right? Whatever trajectory this director is on, who I love. I can't wait to see what he does next. SS Rajamouli. I would love to see him go back with... He's made billions of dollars with these movies, to go back and just clean up the CG. It wouldn't take much, right? But more so than when What's-His-Face went back to the Star Wars movies and added a bunch of CG and did a bunch of stuff that didn't really make those movies better. Like, these movies, I think, given another pass-through, if they just clean... And this movie only needs a little bit. Like, the last part of this movie feels like it could benefit some cleaned up CG, but so much of it was so good. So it's the contrast of that end battle and then that head falling down the waterfall at the end, having that bad CG contrasted with the rest of the movie that is primarily amazing CG work, just made it stand out even more. But other than that, the movie is amazing. I highly recommend checking it out. Both of them are available on Netflix, Baahubali 1 and 2. And, 6 hours, trust me. Just think about it like this. Just think about it like you're binging a series on TV, right? Like a season of Game of Thrones is probably longer than 6 hours. One season. And with these movies, you are getting that level plus of a Game of Thrones type of epic story. With musical moments, with not a whole lot of dancing. There's some, little bit here and there. Mostly big action set pieces. Big battles, great fight scenes, some humor, well written, tons of backstabbing, infighting, sabotage, all those kinds of things. So great. I highly recommend checking it out. Baahubali 1 and 2, but of course in this one I'm talking about 2, the conclusion. Definitely 100% one of my favorite movies. Instantly one of my favorite directors. I want to go back. Ige is another movie of his that people have recommended. I've been told that movies before that of his aren't necessarily the greatest. I might dip into those just to see what they're about. But whatever turn he made, making these movies, making RRR, I'm super excited for whatever he comes out with next. But instantly one of my favorite directors, because these, just based on these 3 movies, I'm blown away. They are so amazing. I love them so much. Amazing storytelling. Amazing epic storytelling. Check them out. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.